This is a review for the quarter 4 exam 1. We're going to go over trig ratios and how to solve using trig functions. So to remember trig, we're going to use SOHCAHTOA. These are to help us remember the ratios for sine, cosine, and tangent. SOHCAHTOA. Example 1, our goal is to find the value of each trigonometric ratio, which means our fraction. Reduce the ratio. So I am told I want sine of C. So I look at angle C. I'm going to label the opposite side. Opposite side from C would be 12. Hypotenuse is across from the 90s. Hypotenuse. Adjacent is between the two angles. That's the shared side between the angles. Adjacent. Because it says sine, we need to write O over H. 12 over 13. Fraction 12 over 13 cannot reduce, so that will be our solution, our ratio. Sine of C. Angle C, I need to label the opposite side, would be O, so opposite. The hypotenuse is across from the 90 degrees. Adjacent is between the two angles. Because it says sine, once again, I need O over H, 7 over 25. 7 over 25 does not reduce, so we leave it. For cosine of x, I go to angle x, I label the opposite, the hypotenuse, and the adjacent. Because it's cosine this time, I need A over H, 16 over 20. 16 over 20 reduces to 8 over 10, and that reduces to 4 over 5. You can't reduce it anymore. 4 over 5 is your reduced ratio. Cosine of C, opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. Cosine is A over H, 18 over 30, which reduces to 9 over 25, and 15, sorry, 15. 3 goes into 9, 3 times, 3 goes into 15, 5 times. 3/5 is our reduced ratio. Tangent. We'd use TOA. So I'm using angle C, opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. Tangent would be O over A. 30 over 40, whoops, getting messy, which equals 3 over 4 for our reduced ratio. Tangent of Z, opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. Tangent is O over A, 20 over 21, does not reduce, so we leave our ratio alone. For the next section, we are going to be finding the missing side, and we need to round to the nearest tenth, so we're only going to have one number after the decimal point. So we look at the angle that was given. We always start with the angle. If I label the sides, I'd have O, H, and A. Notice A has an X on it, O has a 13, but H has nothing. That means you do not need the h. Because you're only given O and A, you are going to use the TOA part from SOHCAHTOA. That means you are using tangent of the angle that you used, 38, to equal O over A. 13 over x. Now we have to solve for x. To get x out of the denominator, we multiply by it. That cancels out, so all that's left is 13. Now, x times tangent of 38, you cannot enter into your calculator because x is a variable. You want to get x by itself. Because they are attached through multiplication, you undo by division. Divide by tangent of 38. Tangents cancel out, you're left with x equals, and now the fun part, 13 divided by tangent of 38 equals 16.63. Because it's a 3, you just write 16.6. You don't have to round it up. 16.6. 8. We have our angle, the opposite side, the hypotenuse, and the adjacent between the angles. 8 and h have a variable or a number. O has nothing on it, it's left out, so we don't need it. Because we have A and H, we are using CA from SOHCAHTOA. So we have cosine of the angle given equals A over H, x over 10. We have x in our fraction, so we want to get rid of the denominator by multiplying by 10. That cancels out. Now, on this one, we have 10 times cosine of 50. We can enter this into our calculator because x is all by itself over here. So when I enter it in, I'll have 10 cosine of 50 equals 6.4. On problem 9, we have 67 as our angle, opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent, there's no O, so we are using cosine of 67 equals A over H. To get the x by itself, we need to get rid of the denominator, so we multiply by 11. That cancels out, so x is equal to 11 cosine of 67. Now because it's 2.9, I have to round it up to 4.3. Problem 10, we have 33 degrees, opposite, hypotenuse. We're going to be using sine of 33 equals O over H. We want to get the x by itself, so we need to get rid of the denominator. Times by 10. X equals 10 sine 33. 5.4. We have our angle 28. We always start with the angle. Opposite side, hypotenuse is missing, the adjacent side. That means we're using SOHCAHTOA, which is tangent of 28 equals O over A. Now to get the x, because it's in the fraction, we want to get rid of the denominator by timesing by x. Now, I have x times tangent of 28. I cannot enter that in and get a value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and move the tangent over so that x is by itself. They're attached through multiplication, so I need to divide. That cancels out, and x equals 19 divided by tangent of 28, which equals 35.7. Problem 12, angle 44. I have opposite and adjacent. Tangent of 44 equals O over A. I need to get the denominator to go away because the x is in the fraction. X is all by itself now, so all I need to do is calculate what 14 times the tangent of 44 equals 13.5. We have 56, we're missing the opposite. We have the hypotenuse adjacent. That means we are using cosine of 56 equals A over H. X is in the fraction, so we want to get rid of it by multiplying. Now we can't undo the sin, so we're going to undo it by dividing by cosine. Cancels out. X equals 14 divided by cosine of 56, 25.0. And 14, 51's our angle. We have the opposite side and the hypotenuse. That means we are using SO sine of 51 equals O over H. Get rid of the denominator because x is on the fraction. Cancels out, and x is equal to 19 sine of 51. 14.8. Now we're going to try and find angles. To find the measurement of an angle in degrees, they'll be in whole numbers. So I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier with SOHCAHTOA. I have my angle, opposite, hypotenuse. There's nothing on the adjacent side, so I do not need it. Because I have O and H, I'm using sine. I don't know what the angle is, so I put an x in, equals O over H, 18 over 20. Now, when we have this, we need the sine. We need to undo the sine so that it moves to the other side. If I divide, it would move the x with it. So to do the inverse of sine, it is sine inverse, and then when I move it over, those parentheses are now around the 18 over 20. And we can calculate that by doing second sine 18 divided by 20 equals 64.1 rounds up to 64 degrees for that missing angle.